Hey guys, I am currently reading Tibor Karolyi's excellent book about the endgames of Magnus Carlsen, Endgame Virtuoso. And basically, it's a collection of his endgames as he's growing up all the way to 2018 when this book was published. And of course, Magnus Carlsen is an excellent endgame player and an excellent overall player, but it's nice to see his evolution from when he was a child, when he was also still a very good endgame player. And so I wanted to share one of the games from the book. And this is actually from 2001, played John Ludwig Hammer, who's also now a grandmaster. They both were not grandmasters at the time. This from Tournament Nordique 2001, and Carlsen is playing the white pieces, and Hammer is playing the black pieces. And black has just played queen to f6, and Carlsen decides to play knight to d3, and of course, a very good move. And not fearing this trade here on f3, because after queen takes f3, g takes f3, this just strengthens white's grip on the e4 square, and we'll see how that plays a little later. Now, if you take a look at this position, what are some of the main characteristics that are going to underlie white's strategy? Why don't you think about that for a moment? You can pause the video if you want, and then you can see how that plays out here. Well, some of the main things that we want to look at here is that material is even at the moment, but black has this weakness here on c6. He can't advance it without giving white a protected pass pawn, which of course would not be great, and also that would weaken the 5 pawn. And then white also has this potential to push e4. So black's position is fairly passive here, because white has a lot of the positional edges. So let's see what happened here. Of course, after g takes f3, we have d5. So black is trying to get some type of counterplay in with his kingside pawns. And the natural move here is rook b to c1, now putting pressure here on c6. And one of the reasons I chose this game was that it seemed like a very nice illustration of how to build up pressure on a, and we'll see how that plays out. Knight to b8. Now here should be noted, and was noted in the book, that rook to e6 isn't so great right now, and let me just show you why here. Sorry, yep. Rook to e6, white can advance for right away. If d takes e4, b5 is going to be bad, because of course we're attacking this rook, and of course the rook move. Then from there, white is going to win on. Okay. And the key here is after d takes c6, black can't play this, because white's just going to take the knight on d7. Okay, so here, in order to defend this pawn, black has to play knight to b. Okay, knight to e5 was played, continuing to put pressure on the pawn. And here, 7 is played. Now, here white cannot take this pawn yet. Why? Because here, after knight takes c6, we have pin, and black is going to win knight. Okay, so in order to deal with that, white plays rook to c5. So now this rook is protected. Now there won't be this pin. So now we truly are threatening to take here on c6. Offhand too, we're also threatening to take here on d5 on his pin. So rook has to go to c7, and now e4. Now the author Carlsen actually suggests king to g2, just strengthening position and to be a little more patient here. But e4 I don't think is too bad either. Okay, e4. E takes e4, f takes e4, and here f6, trying to kick this knight. Now here Magnus makes another great move, knight to g4. So the idea here is going to reroute this knight here to f5, which has been negated. So this is a great square for the knight, and these pawns here are very powerful because at some point pawn can be advanced. Okay, h5. So this isn't really great here because basically we're just, although I guess part of it is trying to get some counterplay here on the king side, but just forcing the knight to where the knight wants to go anyway. Okay, king to f7 and knight to f5. So here the knight sits very well, even though it's not directly contributing right now to this attack on 6. This is just a great square for it to be on. Okay, king to e6, and why don't you take a moment and see what did Magnus play next? This position. Go ahead, pause the video, take a moment, and see if you can about Magnus. Okay, well, seeing his opportunity, Magnus played d5 check. Of course, we cannot take can't take this pawn yet because of rook takes c7, and so king has to move. And here, and hopefully you found this in your follow-up as well, d6, and here we are going to break through here. Rook has to, of course, move and follow up here with 5. So it's kind of a long combination, but you can see it all built up because white forced black into this passive position by attacking his weakness. And what often happens in those cases, and this is an illustration of that, is that we sometimes cannot win the weak pawn, but because of the positional weaknesses that the defender has to undertake, we can attack elsewhere. And some people call this the principle of two weaknesses, where you have one weakness, and then you shift your attack to a different weakness, or use that weakness to transform your strategy into another type of attack, is a way to take advantage. So sometimes the pressure on a weakness does not result in, say, winning a pawn. Okay, let's keep going. F takes e5, rook takes e5, and here rook to e8. And again, here I'm going to give you a little quiz. Go ahead and try to figure out what did white play next. Okay, well, here Magnus made another great move, rook to e7 check. And of course, if he takes here on e8, king takes e8, and say, for example, rook to e1 check, then king to f7, for example, just protects this pawn's not going to promote, and white will just, I'm sorry, black will be just fine. But here with rook to e7 check, of course, we're threatening to win this rook here on b7. So rook takes e7 is forced, and d takes e7. Okay, rook to c7, and final move of the game here, rook to d1 check, forces black to resign. So of course, after king to 8, we would have rook to d8 check. After the king moves, then pawn would promote. So black resigns. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I thought it was a really nice example of endgame, strong endgame play, and illustrating how to attack a weakness and then transform that weakness into other advantages that you could take advantage of. Also, I really wanted to introduce this book to you. I really think it's a neat book. It's a little different in that it's one of those books that I want to kind of play through. Some books with certain games, especially games within my openings, for example, um, or like as Kasparov games. I really want to look at the analysis and look at it more from a tactical level and really get deep into each variation. Whereas this is a book where I think I like playing through it and just getting the feeling, the flow of how Magnus thinks about the end game and thinks about positions. I think that's the best way that I'm going to get value out of this book, as well as it just being very entertaining. Besides uh, very good endgame play, which of course is very instructive, it's also an entertaining view of how Magnus is evolving. Like I said, this particular game was from his when he was 10 years old, so I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm up to about age 12 now, so I'm looking forward to seeing how his game evolves. The author talks about um, how his skills evolve over time. So, anyways, recommend this book. And this wasn't really meant to be a book review, but since I'm talking about it, I thought I would mention that. I'll put the link down in the description below if you're interested. And otherwise, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you guys are all staying safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.